Instead of doing the nation's work with their new majorities in the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, Democrats are wasting the nation's time on a partisan vendetta against a man no longer in office. It's almost as if they have no ability to exist except in opposition to Donald Trump. Without him as their boogeyman, they might have to legislate and to actually convince Americans that their policy prescriptions are the right ones.
I've always liked him, but Senator Rand Paul has been on fire lately, Republican of Kentucky, calling out the lunacy of this impeachment today on the Senate floor. Senator Paul, welcome back to Newsmax. How are you tonight?
Quite good. Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I think we've had a good day. I think we pointed out to people that basically this whole sham is not really constitutional. We had a vote on the floor, and 45 Republicans said, look, you can't really impeach somebody who's already left office. That doesn't make any sense at all.
So 45 Republicans, wow, that would indicate that the likelihood of conviction is 0. So is there any way you're going to be able to turn this thing off?
Well, the impeachment is dead. It's dead on arrival. It takes 67 votes. The Democrats could only muster 55 votes, 50 Democrats and 5 Republicans who decide to vote with the Democrats. But they don't have nearly enough. And the thing is that this divides the country. It doesn't unify anything. So Biden either means that he wants to unify the country or he's just playing games with us. But, you know, if Biden had wanted to rise above this, if he really wanted to be a statesman, he could have said, you know, many Democrats want this, but I think we should just move on and let the country heal. And you know what? His numbers would have probably gone up 10 points the day he did that. But instead, they've chosen to beat this. And I think it's a terrible thing that they're doing to the country. The other thing is that even on the facts of the matter, whether or not there was an incitement of violence, I also mentioned in that speech you showed on the floor that, look, when I was at the ball field and Steve Scalise was almost killed, 4 other staffers were shot, including one of them that was 10 feet from me. The guy who shot up the ball field and almost killed 20 of us was a Bernie Sanders supporter, and he'd been incited by health care. And the thing is, what were the Democrats saying at that time? They were saying, oh, the Republican plan for health care is you get sick and then you die. Well, that to me sounds like if you've got a sick young one or a kid or somebody has leukemia and they might die, that Republicans want your child to die. It sounds like the kind of language that would incite violence, and it set this man off. But not one Republican said, oh, Bernie Sanders is responsible. Not one Republican said, oh, we should impeach Bernie Sanders or censor Bernie Sanders. So I think these people are small people, very small people, pathetic, very bitter, and what they're doing to the country is a terrible travesty.
Senator, there are crazies on the right and the left, and what you say it really resonates. I'm concerned about January 6th. We all know it was a horrible event, and those involved must be punished. But it seems like the left, they're taking advantage of this. They're using it as a 9/11 type scenario where they can enhance security in a way that seems to be targeting, unfortunately, not Al-Qaeda, but conservatives.
Well, and this happened after 9/11 when they passed the Patriot Act. They said, oh, we need more security, we need more surveillance, but it turned out that it was used against Americans. And so what we found out 10 years later that James Clapper said, oh, we're not spying on Americans, and it turns out they were collecting every American's phone call. And James Clapper lied about it, but this was done in the aftermath of 9/11. So now they're talking about domestic terrorism law. It's like, well, who wouldn't want to stop domestic terrorism? You know, the guy McVeigh who blew up the courthouse in Oklahoma and killed 100 people or more. Sure, well, I want to stop mass murders. I'll do, you know, anything. But the details are important as to what they put in these bills. And what if they put the details in there that if you think that there was election fraud in the last election, you should be watched by the police because you might be a terrorist. If you think the election was stolen, somehow you're a terrorist. See, that's the kind of groupthink that I'm afraid of.
Yeah, me too, by the way. You know, Joe Biden, you mentioned a moment ago, during his inaugural, he talked about fighting lies and standing up for the truth, which at first glance sounds great, but there's something actually, I think, concerning about it. I want to play you that moment first.
Recent weeks and months have taught us a painful lesson. There is truth and there are lies. Lies told for power and for profit. And each of us has a duty and a responsibility as citizens, as Americans, and especially as leaders. Leaders who have pledged to honor our Constitution and protect our nation, to defend the truth and defeat the lies.
You know, again, it might sound good, but I'm not sure if leaders of our nation should be determining what's true and what's not true. Freedom of speech and the marketplace of ideas. He's going in a direction I sense that I don't like, and I don't think you would like either.
Well, some of this started a while back because, you know, when we started talking about climate change and global warming, that was before they decided they weren't sure whether it was getting colder or warmer. But now it's climate change. It's become so sort of settled science that everybody says there's only one way you can think. That's a recipe for a closed-mindedness that really prevents innovation and prevents us moving forward. But if I were to say that there's geological changes over long periods of time, about 100,000-year cycles, these were called the Milosevic cycles, and that they have to do with hot and cold, and I'm not sure how much is sort of this natural phenomenon based on the Earth's tilt and how much is true to man, they would say I'm a denier because it's not all man. And I ask them this question all the time, well, how do we know that climate is only affected by man and is no longer affected by the tilt of the Earth? And they're like, oh, it's all man. It's 100% man. It's like, well, can't we at least question how much is nature and how much is man? So when things get so settled that there's one truth, I really worry about our freedoms. And so with the elections, if I say that there was election fraud, and actually I'm agnostic, I don't know if it tipped the balance of the election, but I don't think it was ever fully investigated, and I think we should investigate it so we can have a more secure and have more election integrity in the next election. All of a sudden, I'm a denier, or maybe I'm potentially a terrorist because I think that there might have been election fraud. So this is a very dangerous time, and we need to be very, very concerned and vigilant as we watch what the Democrats are going to try to push forward.
Well, you've been fabulous on this issue. By the way, we all saw you with George Stephanopoulos this weekend. Given that they are tagging anybody who raises doubts about the election integrity as a victim of the big lie or a purveyor of the big lie, what are the chances there's going to be a significant investigation on Capitol Hill with Democrats in charge of both houses right now?
Zero. I think that Republicans were more inclined to investigate big tech, but I think initially there were some people on the left saying, oh, they're a monopoly, but they actually were criticizing big tech for not censoring enough. Now that big tech has come out of the woodwork and is willing to get rid of the president and get rid of a lot of folks, I think the left is actually going to say, well, maybe they are doing our bidding. Maybe we just need to be quiet. So I don't think the Democrats will do much about this. But I do say to people, ultimately, you have your feet and your pocketbook and your mouse. Go somewhere else. My plans are that I will stay on Twitter and Facebook until I've developed another avenue and another application where people can find me. But really, I ultimately will leave unless they change their policies, because the thing is what they are promoting is groupthink. It's not good for speech. It's not good for a country. And ultimately, it breeds this kind of orthodoxy that ultimately I think will be stifling and ultimately will lead to a very regimented thought pattern. And what we need are kids that will grow up and be free thinkers and think about how to get to Mars, how to get to the moon, how to create, pollutionless cars. But we don't need people thinking, oh, the world's going to end next year because of global warming. So that kind of stuff that's being taught out there, that you're not allowed to have other thoughts, is very, very dangerous to our future.
Senator Paul, so glad you are where you are fighting this fight. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Be right back.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.